Hi, my name is Lizzi Heydemann. I'm the rabbi at Mishkan, Chicago, an inspired, down-to-earth spiritual community in the city of Chicago. I went to my first bar mitzvah when I was 5 years old. It was an Orthodox synagogue, and the siddurim they were using were entirely in Hebrew. No translation, no transliteration, all Hebrew lettering. And I was allowed to go and stand near my dad, who's in the men's section. And we stood there for a while, and I noticed people doing something all around me in a language I didn't understand. And at a certain point, a little boy about my age walked up to my father and took the prayer book in his hand and just turned it around, turned it over, because he was holding it upside down. And I now reflect back on that moment, and I think to myself, that's funny, because it's not like my dad knew the language well enough to know how to read the letters such that it would have been useful to him whether it was right side up, just as much as it was not useful to him when it was upside down. Which probably gave my dad the feeling that he didn't know how to pray, because he didn't know how to use the siddur. I think a lot of us walk into synagogues, and even if we can read the lettering in a siddur, we still feel like we don't know how to pray because we don't know how to use the siddur. I have talked to a lot of Jewish people, and something that I have found is that regardless of how much education a person has had, if they went to day school, if they went to camp, if they went to Sunday school, or if they didn't do any of those things, something that almost all of us have in common is that we don't really feel like we know how to pray. Like we don't really know what to do with the siddur in our hands when we go into a service. And I think partially that's because prayer isn't in the book, and nobody ever told us that. We were told, this is a siddur, and if you know how to use it, you know how to pray. But the truth is, the prayers aren't in the book. You, me, all of us are the prayer. We are the prayer. We are the one praying. And if the words on the page are going to mean anything, it's going to be because we make them mean something. And then I realized these prayers were created long before there were prayer books. The invention of the printing press was in like the 16th century. Jews have been praying for thousands of years. So what were we doing before we had prayer books? And the answer is that the shaliach tzibur, the prayer leader, the messenger of the community, would understand who was in the room, what they were yearning for, what they were upset about, what they were joyful about, what they were celebrating, what they were scared of, and would somehow weave all of those ideas, those yearnings, into their prayers and order them according to the order that the rabbis laid out. But it was like jazz. They would improvise it. It would be different every time. And so this really skilled shaliach tzibur, the really skilled prayer leader, was someone who knew how to take all the individual prayers of the people and fold them into the prayer of the community. I think that we as individuals, by virtue of having this book that we think is where the prayers live, I think that we've lost our own sense of how to pray. And so that's a muscle we need to learn how to flex again. Here's what I sometimes suggest. It's that we pick up the book and find a line. Here's one. Mechaye metim barachamim rabim. That's an intense one. Gives life to the dead with great compassion. What kind of a prayer is that? Oh God, will you give life to the dead? Think for a second. Think for a second about a time when something seemed impossible to you. Or maybe when something inside of you felt a little bit dead, a little bit dormant, like something really important, like the part of you that is full of life, full of celebration, full of joy, was inaccessible. Almost everybody's gone through a period of life like that. Or maybe you know somebody who has. Mechaye metim barachamim rabim. What would it look like to address that part of yourself with compassion? And somehow to be with it long enough to watch it wake up again and to have faith that it's possible that the things that have been sleeping, have been dormant, have even felt dead, may come back to life, the same way that trees in the winter that look dead sprout leaves again in the spring. Every single line in this Siddur that looks inaccessible because it's written to a God in a language that was penned a long time ago, and not by you or by me, in words that we probably wouldn't have chosen, is expressing something within us, is expressing something inside of us that isn't so different from the person who wrote these words. It's just, we have to take the time to find out our own way of saying it. Even like Kaddish, Yitgadal v'yitkadash shmei Rabbah, hallowed, extolled be your great name. You know what? How positive do I speak most of the time to most people around me? Here we are, like, exclaiming all these words to God, and then we say to ourselves, why does God need to hear these words? But the truth is, how often do we use these words to talk about life in general, to talk about the people around us? How often do we compliment relentlessly, persistently, the people around us in our lives? What would it look like if we spoke to people the way that we speak to God in the Siddur, with just relentless positivity and praise and blessing? What kind of a world could we create? So I think the prayers are inside of us, and the trick is just to use this book in our laps to help us find the words within our own hearts, to begin to express them in our own words. And we will actually give life to the black on white words on the page that might have felt a little bit dead and can be brought back to life.